Howdy, fellow Vine Trippers. I wanted to take just a moment before the show starts to let you know about a great website called Texas Wine Lover. They can be found at txwinelover.com. And they have a comprehensive website that can become your go-to site for information on Texas wines, winemakers, and the wineries that can be found in this state. They even have a phone app that you can download, and that will help you plan your route to create your own wine trip. So make sure and check them out at txwinelover.com. Welcome to Texas Under Vine, an exploratory podcast to scout out the best that Texas wine country has to offer. I'm your wine guide, Scott, and I'm here to lead you on an auditory expedition to the vineyards and wineries across the great Lone Star State. Each episode will cover a different vineyard, winery, or wine-related business operating in Texas. You'll hear interviews, descriptions, and details about each location that will excite you to visit and experience them for yourself. Ready to plan a wine tour? Use these episodes to choose the most interesting spots for you and your friends to check out. Most of all, enjoy hearing about the rapidly growing wine industry in the state and what makes our wines and wineries the best. Howdy, fellow Vine Tripper. Welcome to episode 27 for Texas Under Vine. So as I stride through the history of Hemisfair Park in San Antonio, home of the 1968 World's Fair, I walked into a beautiful urban winery called Rerooted 210. Now, this is a fun destination that offers sustainable Texas wine options right in the heart of this expansive city. Now, this winery was started by Jennifer Beckman in San Antonio with the urban winery concept in mind. It's right near downtown, right in the heart of the cultural area there in Hemisfair Park. So Jennifer actually started working with several well-known wineries in the Hill Country area. And she took that wealth of knowledge that she gained and the experience that she had at those places to start her own wine destination called Rerooted here in this city that she fell in love with. They opened the location actually just after the pandemic started and created a model that is focused on sustainability and eco-friendliness. So they began a wine kegging program that helps save on the large waste of glass bottles. They feature 12 wines actually on tap on the site and have some glass growler bottles that people can actually get filled and then return to have it cleaned and sanitized for future usage. They also offer some more ageable reserve wine selections that are actually in regular bottles for those that want to wait a few years and age their wines before drinking them. The location itself is surrounded by 3 different parks, and there's a myriad of great restaurants and shops and things all around this place. As an urban winery, they produce their own wines actually in partnership with Michael Barton at Hilmy Cellars. Jennifer is actually the winemaker, but she enjoys Michael's insight, and she's able to use the equipment and the production space that Hilmy offers to create her own wines. As I said a moment ago, there's lots of great restaurants right around the location where you can get great food to go with whatever wine options you've chosen. And really cool, you can actually bring that food into Rerooted or take it all to go and enjoy a great meal and wine out in the park. For accessibility, there's public parking garage right next to the tasting room, and they do actually validate your parking if you go longer than the 2 hours that you get for free when you park there. So as I sat down at Rerooted, I was greeted by the owner, Jennifer Beckman, and we got to engage in a delightful dialogue about this intriguing destination called Rerooted. Let's listen in on that conversation. So I'm here with Jennifer Beckman, the owner of Rerooted here in San Antonio. So tell me a little bit about yourself. What got you into the wine industry?
Well, the running joke is always that I went to school for poetry and fine arts. I was a double major. I was going to drink for a living one way or the other, so I figured out how to get paid for it. But I really started my career in hospitality in Chicago. I worked in restaurants. I was a retail wine buyer for a couple years, did everything, did my sommelier training. And really, once I got through all of that, I had met who is now my husband. He was in the military, and the military brought us to Texas. So we were engaged, decided to make the leap. We thought this would be a pass-through. We didn't think we'd be staying in Texas. So I moved to Texas and stumbled literally into the Texas wine industry. I didn't honestly have high hopes for what I was going to find at that time. This is about 2008. And was really ready. I was critical, and I was ready to write it off. I was at my local pizza place and picked up a flyer that had a list of everything they grew at Parasos Vineyards out in Burnett. They weren't even open yet. I loved what they had. I loved that entire list. It was my dream list of what I would want to see grown here. Went out, fell in love with the wines, and decided to jump into the winery side of the business with both feet. So I spent 2 years working with Seth and Laura Martin out at Parasos and family to help open a tasting room. At the time, we were just running a tasting room out of the back of the cellar. I worked in the vineyard with them in the cellar and development of distribution and marketing and wine clubs and all of those aspects. And it was a great learning experience. Right around that time, that was a really interesting mark in the Texas wine industry. I would say the majority of who I would put in my top 10 for quality in Texas were either just opening their doors or were about to open their doors. So we saw this really big surge of new talent coming into the industry right around that time, which was just a really exciting time to be in it. So we decided, I would say the military brought us here. The wine industry kept us here. We just, by sheer luck of the draw, had our next station in San Antonio. And I fell in love with the city. So just the vibe, the culture, and everything about San Antonio was just exactly where I needed to be in the right moment. So we stayed, and I continued to work with small Texas wineries. I went from Parasos then to Bending Branch. I worked with Dr. Bob and family for the first almost 4 years that they were open to develop that entire opening program. Then I went from them to Coleman Cellars. And that was probably still to date one of my favorite places to have worked with. It was such a fun project. They had a really creative way of looking at how they wanted to bring wine tasting and education into the process, which was, as soon as he said that, I was like, hold my beer. So it was a great time, and worked with them for about 5 years, consulted with a handful of other small boutique wineries, and decided back in about 2017, 2016, we really started developing this concept and knew that San Antonio had a really strong wine community, a wine-loving community, without any actual manifestations of physical wine bars. So we had just one or two that had opened in that time. They were far and few between. So we really saw this niche market that loved Texas wine. And we just didn't see anyone at the time heavily catering to this market outside myself, solely because I lived here. So we decided to open, and the rest. The rest is history. We opened, just post-pandemic. We were supposed to open before the pandemic, and, chose the hardest week in the history of the world to open during Snowvid. But it was an interesting road, and it's been absolutely fantastic being here in this community.
Well, let's drive down that road for a second. So tell me a little bit about Rerooted and kind of where it's located, how you got started, what's the history of this particular location so the listener can hear that.
Well, if we go way back, we're going to have a glass of wine because we went down that real estate road, and it took us years to find the right location. We wanted to be downtown adjacent without being directly in the middle of downtown. We knew we wanted to be in this particular neighborhood, Lavaca, King William, Southtown. We felt this was a great demographic for what we wanted to do. I would say, too, we wanted to change the way things were being done in the wine industry a little bit. I worked for almost 12 years with Texas wineries, and it just broke my heart. Dr. Bob and Bending Branch Winery specific They were so eco-conscious and were making every possible accommodation to make sure that we were recycling, reusing. There was a lot of forethought put into that as part of the model. And we would just one day show up at the recycling center and they no longer took glass bottles. So we started to inquire why that was. And I started to research a little bit about glass recycling in the United States. And you head up and down Highway 290 and God willing, on a busy weekend, you'll see dumpsters full of bottles just heading out the next Monday. And unfortunately, we just don't have any glass recycling in this area, including Bexar County. A lot of Bexar County doesn't offer glass recycling. With some research, we figured out, it's a somewhat dangerous process, which makes it expensive to insure. Therefore, a lot of our communities, not just in Texas, but in the United States, just don't have successful glass recycling. It's a perfect product, ecologically speaking, when we can do full reuse. But we're only, by estimate, recycling about 25 to 30% at a high margin of glass in the United States. The rest goes into a landfill. So we decided to do our wine and keg, and I had the good luck of working with other wineries that were receptive to this idea and got to cut my teeth, look for the problems, and really wasn't finding any long-term issues with the way that wine kegging and service really rolled out. So we decided to keg our wines. We feature a 12-wine tap system. We use potato kegs, which are recyclable kegs, potato plastics. We rolled out a line of our glass growler bottles. So our growlers, a lot like a beer growler, can be reused. We do the sanitation. When people return their bottles to us, we have a deep sanitation process, 48-hour process. Put them through at 180 degrees before we put them back into reuse, make sure they're spectacularly clean. But you always get a fresh growler when you're here. So you bring in something old, you get something new walking out. We sanitize and put them back into the cycle when they're ready. We figured out in just 1 year of being open, just what we serve by the glass or by the sampler, that's 3,000 bottles that we eliminated from use. We just never needed by pouring tapped glass. When we started to look at our reuse program, we were able to calculate that our glass bottles, on average, are sold 4 times. So with the bottles that just sometimes don't come back to us, and then on each average weekend, I made an Instagram post, I think 2 weeks ago, that just had our intake in a 3-day period. We had 46 glass bottles returned to us in just between Thursday and Saturday morning. So on average, we take anywhere between 2 in a low week and 4 cases of bottles back a week.
Wow.
Yeah, so it really makes an impact. The wines, we produce wines that we want you to drink now. The growlers will keep them intact and safe, really, for years. We've experimented. We had a lot of experimentation time during the pandemic, where for science, I had to experiment and open 3 bottles of wine a month.
You love science. You gotta love science.
You gotta love science. So we really, we did our part in looking at how that would work, but we want people to enjoy the wines now. If we learned anything during the pandemic, it's drink it while you got it.
And so much I find of what we say New World wine typically is really made to be drunk young anyway.
Absolutely. And that really hurts my heart. I did cellar consultations for years. And I would go to a cellar and be like, this segment is incredibly valuable and looks beautiful, and this is your estimate. This you should have drank 5 years ago. And you're really sitting on a mountain of vinegar at this point. And I see that stress with people. And in the winery industry, I know every tasting room, associate has had the questions, how long should I age this? Well, there's a little bit of science and a little bit of magic that happens in that. There's not a set predictable date. So don't stress about it. We remove the stress. We have cellared our wines and we produce wines that are drinkable now. There are wines that we recommend be cellared, and we do produce some of those as well. Those are the wines that we do in bottle. We typically only do 2 to 4 releases a year in bottle, and those are our ageable, more reserved selections. Our tap wines, enjoy them now. Enjoy them in the moment.
We just go to the store to get what we want to drink tonight. So
yeah,
just kind of interesting.
Well, and in most European communities as well, especially wine communities, Italy is known for this as well as France. You'll find filling stations. So a friend of mine just got back from a little town outside of Tuscany, and he said there was no sign. I stumble in, and they had these phenomenal wines on tap, dirt cheap, and we just enjoyed wine all afternoon, but we watched the entire community filter through. So people were walking in pajamas or, just picking up their wine for the night or for lunch or the afternoon. And he said they were carrying receptacles that were anything that would carry wine. He saw somebody walk in with a milk jug. People came in with carafes. He said it was meant to be a place where the community can get the wine for the day, for the meal, for the moment, for, pennies on the dollar, what we're going to export at. And it creates a scenario where we have our everyday drinkable wine, but it keeps your local products in your community.
Sure.
And that's really important. I feel that agriculture, we put that focus on everything. We have farmers markets in which we invite people to have the produce from your local farm, support your local agriculture, eat and drink what's made in your community, what's from your community. But wine that goes out the window. When we talk wine and we immediately think wine to be quality has to be California, it has to be France, and that's just simply not true. There are great wines in every community in the United States that are produced there. You just have to find them. Our project here was always about supporting and educating about Texas wine as a whole, as one whole community.
Yeah.
So in addition to the wines that we produce, which, just allows us to keep the economic scale fair on our side and, set our own margins and regulate the quality at which we want to put in front of people, we also focus on wineries and winemakers from across the state. I always say we focus on the macro projects. We have our favorite wines from Messinahoff or Becker, all the way down to the micro projects where we have winemakers that are producing 100, 200 cases of wine a year. So we wanted to make sure that we're really representing the best of what's to offer at every level in the wine industry. So in addition to our tap wines, we have a wine program that features 50 to 60 labels, both small, large, sweet, dry. They're just good wines across the board that we think represent Texas well.
And then how long have your doors been open in this location?
About 2.5 years. As mentioned, we were set to open just before the entire world shut down. Thankfully, we were behind on our construction, so we were able to kick it down the road a bit. Shut down. We opened in February of 21. So it was the first week they had lifted the ability to open for bars and restaurants. So we were opening February 4th. And then as you remember, right around Valentine's Day, mid-February, February 14th, we ran into snowvid. So we were open from Thursday to Saturday and started seeing these weather alerts and decided we were probably safe to say we're not going to open Sunday, not realizing we wouldn't be able to open again until the next Friday.
Right.
So it was an interesting time, but honestly, there are so many silver linings to opening during that time. People were ready to be, embraced back into a community again. Our location, we're in Hemisfair, which is the Hemisfair Park district that has now, we no longer refer to it as just the Hemisfair Park because we have 3 unique parks within one district space. We'll have nearly 10 restaurants building in over the next 2 years. It's a really interesting multicultural project that's happening down here that's just doing really great things for the community. So we love the spot. We love the location. We're adjacent to small neighborhoods that we feel are, just really conducive to our project. And we're 300 feet from the biggest convention center in Texas. So where we get a little bit of tourism, we get a lot of the community. We launched a wine club that was monthly subscription based, which brought people in on a monthly basis just to hang out, have a glass, and get a bottle of wine that you can take home and enjoy now. Don't worry about cellaring it. So we wanted to keep it affordable. And like I said, just community based. So that was, we really lucked out with that. And that opening during the pandemic, it gave us a great time to really get to know our community really intimately.
Yeah.
I were really very frequently asked about the name Rooted. I think the name, it really fit. We looked at obviously thousands of names. We must have spent a year rolling ideas around. And, some of our favorites we found trademarked, some of them weren't. Some just didn't fit. Some couldn't really take root, no pun intended. I was really heavily in love with the idea of vine grafting, what that meant in a more metaphorical level. And it's clear history here in Texas. I used the word grafted several times over, and people that weren't particularly close to the industry looked horrified. And the first thing they thought of was skin grafting. And I was like, no, that's awful. That's not what we're saying. So I found in an old textbook some synonyms for grafting that were rerouted. And that stuck with me. And I just loved it. And the more I rolled it around, and the RE with the colon after, that immediately visually stuck for me, because we were using that prefix a little bit for everything. We wanted to re-educate about what Texas has the ability to do. We wanted to reuse our products. We wanted to recycle, repurpose. That kind of flowed over into everything that we were talking about. So it really, felt natural for us. My husband and I, again, are not from here natively. I'm a Northerner. I was born and raised in Michigan and lived in Chicago for 16 years. And I hated the word uprooted because it sounded disruptive. We definitely weren't uprooted. We just fell in love with a new place and decided to lay down roots here. So we still love our hometowns and our home space, but this is a new hometown for us. So it really just flowed over into everything we wanted to do, including the wine industry. I always say wine making and the story of wine growing, it's rural. We wanted to reroute that in a more accessible urban setting that people could visit more frequently. So it really stuck.
Well, let's talk about the star of the show, wine.
Yeah.
So you'd already mentioned you kind of support these projects here and there. What about your own wine? So where do you usually source your grapes for things like that? And you don't have necessarily, it looks like this is an urban winery, yes. So I don't see a production facility here or whatever. So how does that all work for you?
So we, in addition to kind of keeping our footprint low on our packaging and the way we produce wine, we really wanted to, and I had the opportunity to consult for a family that was interested in doing more of a custom crush project. So I think we're seeing more talented winemakers coming into the Texas community right now than we have land and equipment and tourism resources to offer. So, custom crush facilities and the ability to open tasting rooms and work under one umbrella, I think that's showing the world just better wine across the board. It's allowing for growth in the industry without having to commit to purchasing your own 15 acres and build from ground up and have all the equipment. And ultimately, I think eventually that's a taxing resource. I think that's something that's just going to be taxing to our local environment. So we produce under a shared cellar space. We lease space within a cellar. Our consulting winemaker, Michael Barton, he's the executive winemaker for Helmy Cellars, and we produce at Helmy. So our grape contracts, we only source Texas-grown fruit. We work with Michael to really secure some of the best fruit in the state. And our kind of project, I think, makes it really easy for him to source more quality fruit while knowing that it has a home that may not be fully accounted for in one location. So it's a really great symbiotic relationship that I think we're going to see more of growing over the next few years.
What are some of your favorite wines to make? What are you most proud of?
So I always tell the story of the wine that changed my mind for Texas was Aglianico. So I was ecstatic when we were able to get Aglianico fruit, and it's still to date one of my favorite wines. I'm really a equal opportunity wine drinker. I love wines from all over the world. I love fruit that comes from natively different parts of the world. I'm really an open door. I think Texas was just literally, we always say, what grows there goes there. I think the summer has proved that we just always need more rosé in the climate. So we do a little bit of everything. Our focus on our program is only dry wine. That's just where my palate lies. We do carry even a sampler of sweet wines that, we aim to educate consumers about what sweetness means in reference to wine, to say dry to sweet, off dry. So we build that in to show them a full range of just barely sweet to fully dessert level sweet. But yeah, We have a few that are my favorites, I guess. So Roussanne, one of my favorite whites in the world. I will never say no to Roussanne. I even gave my favorite little cat, who was a Hurricane Harvey rescue, we tried to take to the winery, and she was much like Roussanne, what they call the princess of the vineyards, did not like living outside. So Russie, she is my namesake. But we really first look for, the fruit that best represents the Texas climate, which is fairly varied, but we work with Tempranillo, Aglianico, Mourvedre. We have some Cab Merlot coming up, Tannat. So there's not much I'll say no to working with, but those are some of my favorites.
What about customers? What are the things that you find to be most popular here in the tasting room?
That is an absolute mixed bag.
Okay.
And whenever we find a favorite, it definitely turns on its ear. We definitely have taps that run faster than others. We look for, I mentioned before, when we work with large producers, we look to find their best representation, put it on tap, because it allows to take any kind of direct association. It's a way to experience wineries that you may have had before, and you may have had their grocery store tier. That's not the sum of all of their parts. So it gives us an opportunity to really experiment and turn people on to things that they never would have tried if it was by purchasing a bottle.
Right.
So it allows us to really let people get adventurous with our program. And we've had on tap, we've had Chardonnays, dry rosés, full-bodied reds, tannic reds, that people generally walk in the door saying, I don't like these things, and then have the ability to try and taste through and change their mind a little bit. And that's a lot of fun. We definitely have an adventurous palate here in San Antonio. We've just seen, even in 2008, 2009, in tasting rooms, the majority of our guests would walk in. It was a, 60-40 split that they'd look for sweet wines. We've really watched the development and the maturity of that ultimate palate for our communities grow in just, a very short time. And in a little over a decade, we've seen that table shift very quickly. So while we carry something, we make sure there's something for every palate. We really see, our dry wine program is by and large the most popular.
So let's think about the location here for a second. A great location. So many things. I love all the little businesses around here and all that. It seems like a great place to just come and hang out. Not when it's 105 degrees outside, but, on normal times, a great place to just walk around this area with a park and everything there. But do you do any kinds of events or attractions or things here?
Yes, we really hit the ground running in the fall. So what makes the Hemisfair District so unique, not only do we have a massive children's playscape and splash pad and things for families to enjoy. Again, I mentioned we have several really cute little restaurants and bars that sort of skirt the park. We're starting to see the finish point of what is now called Civic Park. So Civic Park is an entire city block that's now being developed into walking paths and waterways. We'll have water features all the way throughout, tree-lined areas, a lot of shade. So kind of San Antonio's answer to Central Park will be opening up on September 28th. So now we have the Jazz Festival that'll open that part of the construction here on 28th and 29th. Outstanding live music festival here in the park. We have the Muertos Festival, which happens in the late October, 28th, 29th. It's one of the most beautiful events I've ever attended in my life, much less been in the middle of. Just gorgeous altars, people in costume, people paying respects. The community is just in such a great place and such a great vibe during this festival. Food vendors, drinks, you can take wine to go throughout the park all year round, which is a really unique aspect that you can really come in, have a glass, take a bottle, enjoy this huge natural surrounding that we're in the middle of. It's a urban oasis, to say the least. So it's a lot of fun and a unique way to enjoy wine.
Yeah, there's always a lot of big things. You have Fiesta. There's always a lot of big celebrations in San Antonio. And I imagine you get to be in the heart of a lot of that.
We love to eat and drink here in San Antonio. So now we've really continually come up on top, the San Antonio community, in supporting food and drink over the last 10 years. So it's an amazing community to be in and be a part of. Now, with events that we sponsor, we do a wide range of classes, meet the winemaker, panel style of events. Quarterly, we do work with a local nonprofit in which we do a portion of proceeds giving back to our local organizations that we believe in. So we try to keep the events varied and educational. We do a lot of that. So we'll have a whole new roster coming up for September.
Well, I'm going to now focus in more on like a tasting experience. So the customer hears about this. They want to go check out Rerooted. They're down here. So they come through the doors. What does a tasting look like?
We tell people, we take phone calls every day asking about reservations. None are needed. Just
So walk-ins are great.
come on in. We're open from 1 to 9, Thursday through Monday. You can really tailor the experience you're looking for. We offer a sampler program. So either 4 samplers on the dry side or 4 on the sweet side. You can mix and match. We can help tailor to your palate. We have a lot of wine to choose from. We feature on average about 15 to 20 wines by the glass, always, including locally produced meads and ciders. Other than that, you can really enjoy our wine or other Texas wines in any format that makes you comfortable.
Is there a fee for the tasting?
The tasting, the Rerooted sampler is $14 per person. We have the sweet sampler, which is $16 per person. And ultimately, we try to keep things approachable and affordable for people to experiment through.
Okay. What about some of the fun questions like family friendly? People under 21? What about if I want to bring my dog with me? Things like that.
We are very family friendly. Again, we are in the middle of a massive park that's largely catering to children, playscapes, splash pads. You can bring the kids and take classes to go to the park, or if you're overheated, come on over, bring the kids with you. We have a lot of families that you'll frequently find here, especially on weekends. So we are completely and totally family friendly.
Do you have any maximum group sizes or anything like that?
We ask for a heads up on groups that range over, 6 to 8, just to make sure that we have enough table space to keep you in one area.
Okay. What about food type options? Do you provide any food options, or can people bring their own?
We do cheese and charcuterie options, anything from a larger board that's, adequate for 2 to 4 people, to individually plated charcuterie. So 1 cheese, 1 cured meat. We use 1 local creamery, and then we have some cheeses that represent, styles from around the world. People ask me all the time. We have little dipping accoutrements and whatnot to go with that on the larger boards, Marcona almonds, olives. They ask me, did I have a chef develop that? And it is literally just my plate of favorite things to snack on. So yeah, we like to keep them wine friendly and, just keep it a little bit fun.
Okay. Or can people bring their own stuff in?
We do allow for outside food as long as it's not cheese and charcuterie, which we sell. If you want to order pizzas, we recommend dough, which is directly across the park from us. You can walk over there in 5 minutes, bring it back. We spend a lot of time doing that, getting brats over at Kunstler Brewery, just opened a small tap room. We'll very soon have Bombay Bicycle Club, which is phenomenal cheeseburger, great bar food. So we'll have a lot of options opening up. And if you'd like to bring it over here, we're always welcoming that.
What about busy or slow seasons? I know we talked a little bit about some of those festivals, all that kind of stuff. What's the best time to come visit?
We do have a parking garage that's located directly next to us. There are public lots and city lots that keep it affordable, flanked around the perimeter of Hemisfair, but that public garage directly next door to us, we have validation for. So you can park there. 2 hours are free. We validate for an hour and a half. During festival season, starting early October and running all the way up through late November, we will be almost every single weekend. There's a public event in the park. So there's live music, Veterans Day festivals, Diwali for the Festival of Lights. A lot of really interesting multicultural things to see and do. Luminaria, great arts festival, will be here on October 21st. So those are some of our busiest months, October and November. The parking definitely gets a little harder in that area when you're looking at those months. But ultimately, we stay very consistently busy between, October and really into summer months where everyone sees kind of that summer slip.
Great. What about, you mentioned your wine subscription. What kind of wine club options do you
Yeah.
got?
We have two different wine clubs. We have one club called the Revision. That's a more traditionally based quarterly club. We do 3 or 6 bottle options, and we try to mix that one up a bit. So thematically, we generally take the approach of, let's say, for example, Tempranillo. We had a Tempranillo package that had a sparkling rosé Tempranillo. Tempranillo from one of our favorite producers who may have some of the biggest plantings of that particular grape in the state, and then one of our wines kind of paired with it. So we really look, sometimes we go outside the box and throw in international versions, just unique looks at international versions of those same varieties that represent Texas. Our more popular club, our everyday club, we call it the Refill. That one is a monthly subscription. You buy your first 3 months up front for $72 and just one lump sum. You get 1 bottle fill a month from our tap system, complimentary, and then 15% off everything you drink when you're here or to take away, including events. So we do discounted rates and first access on all of our events to our club members. After you do that 3 months, it drops to $20 a month. All the same perks apply.
Cool. Do you do any kinds of distributions of your own wine? So like, is there a way for people to taste your wine without having to come here?
Not yet. We do very little distribution. We've worked very closely with some local breweries, done special events with local restaurants, but at the moment, we just don't make enough to get outside our own doors. So as that's growing, we're hoping to expand a bit more, but that'll be a project at a later date.
Well, you speak of growth there. What are your plans for future growth?
People keep asking if we'll expand to a second location. I am just trying to survive the first one. So right now, we're just seeing consistent growth still, month after month. We see, as we're heading into our busier seasons, we're seeing yearly growth, monthly growth, new records. So right now, we're just really ramping our production, ramping our offerings, extending what we can do, our staffing, to really match that growth. We saw, which is not quite the feat that it sounds like on paper when you do it during a pandemic, but from our first year to our second year, we saw a little over 100% growth. So we, just planning on what our consistent model is going to be, watching the construction happening around us and new businesses that are coming into this area are doing nothing but helping drive more traffic. We're just trying to keep up right now here. So will we ever open another location? I'll never say no. The rerouted 210, that was designed, 210 is the area code for San Antonio. That was designed that we could plug and play that with any area code in any community. We have the trademark on any 3-digit number. So that was something that we always had kind of at the forefront of thinking, but we'll see. That's yet to be determined.
So rerouted 512 is still yet to happen.
Yet to happen.
Okay. So what, in your opinion, is the number one thing that sets Rerouted apart from other places that people could go that they just say, I got to go check that place out?
Oh, wow. That's a big question. And I could give you the answer that would be great marketing and what I think makes us different. And that's, convoluted long list. Or I can get the answer that we hear from people daily. Our guests come in every single day. We know most of our clientele by name. We love to have conversations, long and short. We love to cater that part of the community. We're always happy. Our staff is always here to introduce people to something new, something they haven't tried. So I would say our people, our team, our entire staff are, budding sommeliers. We put everybody up through currently level 2 WSET testing and now moving into level 3. We have a lot of passion for what we do. Somebody locally just brought us up in a meeting talking about downtown business growth and said, if you would have told me that this concept could make it in 2021, I would have laughed. And he said, you walk in the door and you see a room full of people and people that know each other, and the vibe is high and the people are good and everyone's friendly, and you can see the passion, and the passion draws people to it. So I think it's just our love for the wines and for Texas wine in particular, and education. And that really rolls over, and our community feels that in return.
So if you are in the greater San Antonio area, or maybe you just plan to travel there soon, you have to find some time to get down and check out Rerouted 210 there at Hemisfair Park. The interior of the tasting room is really artfully decorated with reclaimed items that actually form beautiful light fixtures and artwork. Jennifer has also used several commissioned art pieces for her actual bottle labels and has framed versions of those artworks actually displayed around the modern and this urban feeling tasting room. The wines are delicious, and you know you're contributing to a better planet by enjoying wines from a keg rather than throwing away more and more and more bottles into the landfill. And the park area and all of the little restaurants and shops in the area could make for a whole day of walking around and enjoying your day while sipping on some great wine. So when you decide to go check it out, make sure you see their website first. It's www.rerootedwine.com. You're going to find history of the location, info on Jennifer and some of her background, as well as great photos of the tasting room itself. Their wines are also listed here, as well as some events that Jennifer puts on and info on how to join the wine clubs that she talked about in the interview. Now, don't forget, when you go see them, make sure to tell them you heard about them on this podcast, Texas Under Vine. Now, although I typically prefer to drink red wines over white wines, I actually fell in love with a 2021 Gruner Veltliner while I was there. It was a delightful and crisp wine that was full of Texas flavor and refreshing on a hot summer day. So that's what I had to buy for my wine library bottle for this episode. Although I actually wanted to put down some roots here, it's time for me to reroot myself in another great Texas wine destination and bring you all the good things about other locations in the state. One last request, however. I'm nearing my 1-year anniversary of bringing you these episodes and vignettes of great Texas wine destinations. I really hope you're enjoying them and you're gaining valuable information from each episode before you go to visit. If you are, I'm sure there are many others out there that could also use this info. So getting noticed in the podcast rankings can be a little difficult and a little challenging, but you can actually help me for free. By going to wherever you get this podcast, whether that's Apple or Spotify or other great places, you should have an option there to leave a rating and a review for the show. If you would be so kind to do that for me, it really does help me conquer that algorithm and get the show noticed by even more new listeners who might be interested in Texas wine. Plus, your feedback really does mean a lot to me, and I take it all to heart. So my time is up, but don't forget, subscribe to the podcast and follow my socials to be notified whenever the next episode is posted. And until next time, happy trails and bottoms up, y'all. Thanks for listening to Texas Under Vine. We strive to provide you with the best information about wine businesses all over Texas. Be sure to check out our website at texasundervine.com and follow us on our socials at Texas Under Vine to stay up on all the upcoming episodes. Please email us with any suggestions or feedback. Also, contact us if you're interested in donating, sponsoring, or advertising on the podcast, just to help us cover our expenses and bring even more great info to you in future episodes. Above all, travel safely, and most especially, drink responsibly. Don't forget to also check out the Texas Wine Lover website and their phone app. If you want to plan a trip to the wine destination I talked about in this episode, the site for Texas Wine Lover and their phone app that you can download will really help you organize a trip so you can go see them. You can check out all of the goodness that I got to experience while I was there. But as you're planning your trip, while you're on their website or their app, you can also find out things like accommodations, restaurants, and even some fun events and things that are going on at the wineries, and maybe even find one that you want to experience as part of your wine trip that you never even expected. So check them out. Again, it's txwinelover.com.